So we talked about the big three: Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And there's also one that we hear about is Sales Spider. You know, it's a newer one I think that's out there. So what are the big differences between those three or four sites, and what are the nuances of each one?
Yeah, happy to talk about it. So, just looking at some of the stats. So LinkedIn, over 40 million people, mainly professionals. It's the only social networking site that may have the major ones and where that skews a little bit higher, male to female. Facebook, last time I checked,
200 million.
Yeah, 200 million and growing pretty incredibly fast. With actually the fastest growing segment being baby boomers on Facebook right now. Not as much of a business focus as to why people use it. It's usually more keeping in touch with friends and family. It skews a little bit higher female to male. Actually, I'd say most social networks are a little bit higher female to male, and if the last data that I saw that it actually looks at it, the females to males actually use it for a little bit different reasons. So where females, or typically the answers that they've given in data and analysis in the past, they are more likely to join social networks to keep in touch with friends and family, where more often than not males were to meet new people. So I don't know what that really says about us, but in that context. And then Twitter, as far as stats go, Twitter has grown pretty quickly. So one of the things I think is surprising is how many executives and even technology executives are involved with Twitter. Last time I checked, it was 14.
It's probably about that. Yeah, Twitter has kind of interesting stats because they got
So many bots on it.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of spam accounts on Twitter. Twitter is going to basically have a critical mass problem, I think, pretty soon, where basically the issue is the signal to noise ratio is going to get so skewed. It's going to be very difficult to find what you need. Twitter is kind of interesting because so I signed up for Twitter probably 2 years ago, but I didn't actually really start using it in earnest until maybe 8-9 months ago. Basically because there weren't enough of the people that I was interested in on Twitter at that point. And that's why I think a lot of people will maybe join Twitter and then look around for a little while and then stop using it. So Twitter got an Oprah bump in March, I think it was like March,
Yeah.
April. They got 3 to 4 million new users in between that beginning of March and kind of end of April period. But only about 40% of them actually stuck around, if that much. Because there may be, it was the older demographic, which does not constitute a very large percentage of Twitter's user base. So basically they all logged on, didn't see necessarily that their friends were there, and then maybe went back to Facebook where more of their friends already were. Whereas AJ mentioned a lot of technology executives, things like that, the kind of early adopter crowd, a lot of them are on Twitter. So a lot of their existing peer groups are on Twitter. So they tend to stick around because they already have things that they can identify those relationships much more quickly.
It's funny, I didn't get too involved with Twitter when it first came out for different reasons. And the reason being is I thought when it first came out, I said, all right, here's this tool, this platform that I thought was completely useless. I said, I absolutely hate this. I have to sit here and update people. I said, what I'm doing, I'm going to go get a sandwich, I'm going to go get some pizza, and so forth. So many people, and that's where my original impression of Twitter was. A, that's annoying. B, how is that going to impact my business? Because I'm a business owner, just like everyone else, most of the people here in the audience. Okay, so how is that going to impact the bottom line? Really, what quickly happened was that Twitter became much more than that, much more than just something to update people as to what I'm doing and where I'm going. Really what became is an incredible way to share information and to point people towards information. and to have a dialogue in a way that brings benefit to other people that I actually share interests in or likes and so forth. Give you a perfect example of how powerful it has become. Do you remember when the plane crashed in the Hudson not too long ago? Well, one of the things I thought was interesting was that, when the traditional media was stuck in, midtown traffic trying to get over to take pictures of this thing, a picture of the plane had already gone around the world. And the reason being is because someone with their iPhone was on the barge and was able to take a picture of that plane and upload it to Twitter. And so many people started sharing the information. And that's really the power, is the speed and the efficiency and the reach that Twitter has. And so if you think of that in terms of how you might be laying out your social media strategy, whether it's developing a following and having conversations around a blog with people who are interested in the types of things that you have to say, or it could be to maybe even just engage people that based upon things that they're saying, problems they're having, because there's some pretty sophisticated monitoring tools within Twitter. All these things, Twitter is helpful in back to business.
Yeah, and I mean, AJ mentioned this as kind of a resource for information sharing. Twitter is think of it kind of as a pointer to direct you to more information somewhere else on the internet. It's very hard to encapsulate a very complex idea in 140 characters. So that usually points to a blog post or a news article or something like that. When I did start using on Twitter a lot, the thing that I mostly used it for was an information gathering tool. So before that I used a lot of RSS feeds. I don't know if you're familiar with RSS feeds, but basically they're a way to pull in information from websites into a program, and it aggregates a whole bunch of information, all right? But that's aggregating it from websites. So I'll sign up to CNN's top stories, and I'll get CNN's top stories. Well, basically when you follow someone on Twitter, you're basically signing up to receive their updates. Well, if I follow someone that's interested in technology, they may post updates that link to all sorts of different technology resources, stuff that maybe doesn't show up on CNN Technology or Engadget or Slashdot, whatever. All of these very obscure sources, and then it'll help me find new sources of information. So I mean that's really kind of how it's also powerful, is taking advantage of the community for helping you identify new things that you otherwise wouldn't be able to find on your own.